Hello and welcome to Reality Recapped, where I recap all of the trashiest reality shows. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and it's through that lens that I watch these shows and make my comments. Of course, I have not met with any of the people on this show, so everything that I state is simply an opinion. My channel is a little bit of education and a whole lot of snark. This week, I'm recapping Season 1, Episode 8, Sister Wives Special.
1 husband, 4 wives, 16 children.
It's not like your wife hunting.
More like wife hoarding.
Once, the Brown family lived together in secret, but now they have welcomed cameras into their world.
You get to see me get schooled several times.
And you deserve it every single time.
They have taken America by storm. Cody, Janelle, Mary, Christine, and Robin open up about everything.
Ooh, everything?
That's a private part of our life, and we really don't even want to go there.
That's more like it. Natalie Morales asked Cody, why did he come on a national show?
The society was too secretive, and so I felt that there was a need for transparency.
I've covered the motivation for the family to join the show in Season 1, Episode 1. If you haven't yet watched that video, I'll put a link in the description box below. To summarize, there were raids done on the FLDS communities and children were separated from their families. The Browns were concerned that that could happen to any polygamous families and decided to become more visible in an effort to normalize their lifestyle. But first, a side tangent. Oh my gosh, if your kid has a cold sore, don't kiss your kid and then everybody else in the family because they're all gonna get cold sores.
The Browns are fundamentalist Mormons who practice polygamy, which was disavowed more than a century ago by the mainstream Mormon church, known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Today, it is estimated there are more than 35,000 polygamous families in the U.S.
There are an estimated 35,000 polygamous families living in America in 2010. Has the population of polygamists grown since then? It's now 13 years later. Have the Browns reached their objective of normalizing their lifestyle and changing public perception of polygamists? This article is from the Gallup Poll, an organization that polls Americans' views on varied topics and charts changes. And I will link this article in the description box below. I know some people have had trouble finding the description box, so I'm going to give a quick tutorial how to find it. If you don't need to know how to find the description box, you're welcome to skip to 324. If you're on a computer, scroll under the video until you see a little box that says Show More. You click on that and it will open up the whole description box. See my cursor over the different articles? To read any of those or to watch the video, simply double click and it will open it up for you. If you're on a phone, similarly, you go under the title, you see the ... more, you click on that, and the description box will open. If there's a lot of information in the description box, you might have to click more again to see everything. And then again, you're gonna see all of the articles linked. And again, you can double click on those and they will open it up. I hope that helps. Now back to the article. According to the New York Times, in 2021, there are an estimated 65,000 polygamous families living in the United States. Of course, we don't actually know if the numbers have increased or if people are simply more visible now because it doesn't appear states are prosecuting polygamists. One of the challenges with talking about the legality of polygamy as a family structure is that there is a subgroup of men marrying children under this umbrella. These men are being prosecuted. And they should be. I am not saying child brides are okay, and I'm not putting them in this discussion of legality because to me, those are two different conversations. Marrying children that cannot give consent should be illegal no matter what the family structure looks like, whether it's monogamy or polygamy. According to the Gallup poll, Americans find polygamy more acceptable now than before. Of course, raw data doesn't fill in the reasons for the change, but the article goes through a few theories that I'm going to touch on, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the points and my opinion on what's happening. So this is the chart that's in the article, and essentially these are percentage points of acceptability. So in 2010, when Cody was interviewed for this, 7% of the population felt that polygamy is morally acceptable. And if we go into 2020, 20% of the population finds that polygamy is morally acceptable. The article has 5 explanations for the change in acceptance. The first is acceptance of alternative lifestyles has increased across the board. For example, acceptance of gay or lesbian relationships has risen by 22 points. Having a baby outside of marriage, sex before marriage, and divorce have all gained about the same increase in acceptability. The author argues that people have just become more open-minded when it comes to alternative lifestyles. The second theory to explain the increase in acceptance is due to increased representation in media from shows like Sister Wives, Big Love, My Five Wives, and most recently, Tiger King. The presence of these shows in the popular culture may have the impact of legitimizing polygamy by making it appear to be a more routine and less deviant family arrangement. The article goes on to say that traditional marriage may be a factor. Married people are significantly less likely than unmarried people to find polygamy morally acceptable. This quote-unquote marriage gap in views of polygamy has been getting larger over time. Furthermore, the percentage of married people in the U.S. has also been declining from 53% in 2003-2006 to 49% in 2018-2020. A fourth factor is demographic subgroup trends. Most attitudes about moral issues differ among subgroups of the population, and polygamy is no exception. The defining variables on which views of polygamy pivot are age, so young people are much more accepting, religiosity, with the less religious much more accepting, marital status, not married, much more accepting, and political identity. Democrats are more accepting. Some of these demographic gaps have widened over time. The percentage of young people who find polygamy morally acceptable has risen from 9% to 34%, from 2003-2006 to 2018-2020, significantly more than the increase among older Americans. Similarly, unmarried Americans increase their acceptance of polygamy more than married Americans, as have Democrats compared with Republicans, and those who are less religious compared to those who are very religious. Another proposed idea was that the wording for the question changed in 2011, and maybe that impacted how people responded. The question originally asked, polygamy when one husband has more than one wife at the same time. In 2011, it was changed to polygamy when a married person has more than one spouse at the same time. And notably, there was an increase in acceptability when the question was changed, but moral acceptability has continued to rise since then, and so it's assumed that the question being changed isn't the cause for the shift in acceptability. And now for my thoughts. I agree with the article that age, religion, marital status are all factors in what we see as morally acceptable. I would agree that what we watch does impact our opinions and behavior. When I watch gardening channels, it inspires me to garden, just as when I watch hoarders, I'm inspired to clean. However, watching polygamy on TV does not make me want to move to Utah and become a quote-unquote spoke in the wheel. But am I more accepting of polygamy now? What I will say is that my understanding of polygamist family structures have increased, and I think anytime you understand something, you're less judgmental of that thing. So, am I more accepting now? Maybe. I am a little more accepting now than I was, but I don't think the shift is that significant. I think I've always had the viewpoint that people should live their lives in the way that works for them. And I also think there's a lot of different types of people on the planet with very different personalities, and it makes sense to me that they're going to want different social structures. And who am I to say that they can't have that? So those are my thoughts, but I'm really curious what you think. First off, do you think you're more or less accepting of polygamy now? And if your opinion has changed, what factors led you to that change? Do you agree shows like Sister Wives change public perception? And now let's get back to the special.
Chicks don't understand that a guy can have 4 best friends.
And yet Cody gives us another example of why he constantly needs to be put in his place. So Janelle, let's go ahead. Maybe you can put him in his place.
Chicks.
Chicks,
We're
sorry.
chicks.
Here's the thing.
Chicks.
So Cody is saying something very misogynistic, and he does get corrected. And when I first saw this, I thought, these women have voices, and I wasn't expecting the women to speak up for themselves. So I think the fact that they did speak up for themselves made me think, oh, okay, so it doesn't seem as sexist as I was expecting. However, looking at this now, them laughing about the fact that their husband is saying misogynistic things and they're having to correct him, he's 40. He's not getting this and he's never going to. And it's not funny that you married somebody who thinks women are beneath men. So while Cody being on TV has increased acceptability of polygamy, Cody does something in this next scene, which is something I refer to as a tell. It's something that people do subconsciously that tells you in a nutshell who that person is before we see it all play out. What he's about to say are things that we didn't find out until 17 years later. This all got confirmed 17 years later.
America has a point of view prejudiced against me. When I step forward, the stereotypes automatically get assigned. Oh, maybe this guy is patriarchal. Maybe this guy is narcissistic, self-obsessed, and he loves having women worship him. And through the process of the show, I think you get to see me get schooled several times.
So he's telling us right now he is narcissistic, he is patriarchal, or he's trying to be. He is sexist. He does want women to worship him. He is telling us who he is in this moment. But he's flipping it because he's saying, these are your prejudices against me. This isn't who I am. This is what you think you see when you look at me. What effect does a strategy like that have on the viewers? I think it definitely worked on me. I was like, oh, maybe I am being prejudiced. Maybe I do need to be more open-minded. Because yeah, like, why am I automatically assuming all these things about this poor guy? And it turns the argument into being about him and into being about the viewers. And it's very crafty. Good job, you little narcissist. And again, let's go back to his point where he's saying, I'm saying these misogynistic things, but I get checked. So that means I'm not misogynistic? That doesn't make any sense. Just because your wives are checking you doesn't mean that you're not still a misogynist. Natalie Morales asks about adding a new wife.
You know, every time a new one comes along and I go through my insecurities and my jealousies, I work through them and we become a stronger family.
So this is a great time to talk about if you grow up in a sexist environment, we internalize those messages and we believe that, as Mary has said here, she feels jealousy because there's a lack of moral strength that she has. She needs to get right spiritually, and then she won't have these jealousy issues. She needs to be stronger because these are her issues. It's not a natural consequence because of her husband choosing to have multiple wives. No. It's a failure on Mary's part, or on Christine's part, or on Janelle's part, or on Robin's part. And that's another facet of this lifestyle that I think is really tragic. Blaming somebody for having normal emotions about something that any of us would have as a moral failing and a spiritual crisis that they have to tend to themselves with God. Cody talks about being on the show and how problems come up and how they have to revisit them.
When you're on that couch, you're really listening.
I guess I could be less of a chump and more of a man.
You get a triple whammy. You experience the feeling. A couple months later, you talk about the feeling. And then many months later, you see it again on TV and you relive it.
So we're so over certain episodes.
Yeah, we don't want to watch that ever again.
I think this conversation gives Robin knowledge that she's going to have to hide her manipulations better in the future. And I think that's why it's so hard to pin her down, because she does a really good job of essentially being there and kind of being invisible. But I definitely think she's Machiavellian. I think she's like the puppeteer behind the scenes. We just don't catch it on camera because she is way smarter than Cody, and that's a low bar. But she understands she needs to be behind the scenes, and then there's no evidence of anything that she's doing. I think Cody is having to deal with something that he's never had to deal with before, which is video evidence of how he behaved and what he said. One of the main calling cards of narcissist is gaslighting. That event never happened. You're misremembering. That's not what I said. But in this situation, he's on video saying these things, and they can go back and cite these. So this represents a kind of a problem for Cody. He's going to have to figure out a way to be manipulative but not get caught on camera. And that adds a lot of challenges for him. So what he has fallen back to is, I'm a chump. You need to be patient with me. You know, I make mistakes and I'll just do better. Thanks for telling me. Natalie asks, what are you most afraid of by coming on national television?
I worry about the children. So we've doubled our effort just so that the fabric of their lives is not changed.
Many of the older kids have talked about the poverty level that they were living in and how much their lives improved when the show began. Natalie talks about Cody being the center.
Moon, and they rotate around you.
That's very flattering for a big ego.
Normal people wouldn't find that flattering. They would be horrified.
The image that we see.
Yeah, the public has misunderstood that there's this cat fight, if you will, for my time, but that's not really there. All the relationships are being nurtured.
So he's gaslighting us right now, saying that we think we see something where people aren't being taken care of, and that's not true. And of course, as we know, it is absolutely the truth.
You really need to have a lot of openness and honesty in a situation like this.
You've got to have love and you got to have forgiveness in a relationship.
Narcissists understand what makes a healthy relationship, and so they will use these buzzwords to kind of shame their partner. So what Cody is saying is he will make a mistake and then the wives won't let it go. And they need to forgive him, and if they just forgive him, then they can have a better relationship. What doesn't get addressed is that the behavior doesn't change. He turns the focus to the person who's upset with him and says, well, you just need to forgive me. I mean, we can't have a good relationship unless you forgive me. Do you see how that gets twisted into pushing off the responsibility onto your partner rather than taking ownership of your behavior and how you're treating other people?
Janelle is the level-headed one, the thinker, the worker.
So first things first, I love Janelle. I do think she's very intelligent. I do think she's very level-headed. I think she's applauded for being unemotional, and it's seen as a strength, but I see it as a deficit. Emotions are indicators. They're information. It's similar to eyesight and hearing and taste and tactile senses. This is additional information. Though emotions can feel really overwhelming and overpowering at times, our job as adults is to create a relationship with ourselves that we can understand our emotions and we can regulate them and we can use them as they are designed to protect us. Janelle, I think, is one of the most financially abused wives out of everybody. The only reason they had that house in Lehigh was because she inherited money from her family. She has been the only wife who has worked full time. She was also the most frugal, arguably. Always willing to go without, always willing to cut corners. Remember, she went camping with Cody and he's like wanting to buy a new sleeping bag and she's like, this one's fine. And he's like, the zipper's broken. She's like, yeah, we can just use it as a blanket. She ended up leaving this marriage with no assets in her name, and all she had was the piece of property that Cody also had his name on. And man, Robin ends up with $1 million home that Janelle gave the money for the down payment for, so she could even buy it. And finally, the last thing I want to touch on in this video is what Cody says would happen if one of his wives decided to leave.
If any one of them chose to leave, they would get the children.
Did you hear that, Robin? Are you paying attention?
The show sparked an investigation into the family by the Lehigh, Utah Police Department.
This would scare any family, any parents, anyone, any sort of investigation, and especially the fear of your children being taken away from you. So it does take a lot of bravery to come forward, and they did end up shifting public opinion. Whether we love Cody or not, he did take a huge gamble. Maybe he did it for his own ego. Maybe he did it for the good of all the polygamists in the world. Who knows? But it did take courage to step forward and to be visible. That's it for this week, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It makes a huge difference on my end, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Have a wonderful week. Until next time.